Welcome to another episode of iSocial Talks. Hashtag iSocial Talks. I'm Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans on the Twitters. Joining you today on a beautiful October 1st day. We're going to talk social strategy. But before that, I have to kind of talk a little bit about what's kind of been going on. I've had some crazy fun experiences recently on some people that have kind of reached out and said, hey, I've learned so much on your iSocial Talks. Are you doing a podcast? What's your next project? So I'm happy to report my next project is actually launching tomorrow, October 2nd at noon, 9 a.m. You see behind me. Hashtag Cloud Talk. It's a new Twitter chat, Google Plus Hangout combo. If you're familiar with Social Selling Hour, SS Hour, that I host with Rachel Miller on Mondays, this is the next rendition focusing on cloud technology. We're talking a little bit of everything cloud. I got a promo video up there. We're going to have a podcast, a new website, some additional content coming for that. So hopefully you guys will join us and spread the word. This isn't just for techies. I can promise you we're going to talk to all different range of people utilizing cloud technology, what it means, how cloud's affecting businesses. Our first guest is the CEO of Ustream, and the entire thing is kind of sponsored by IBM and Avnet, and because they really get it. They get the importance of not only educating the community, but supporting community type projects like the one Cloud Talk that I'm working on. So enough about Cloud Talk, social strategy. So one of the most probably, I'd say one of the questions I've got a lot recently comes around Twitter chats, and then it talks about social strategy. And social strategy is a funny one because if you're reading books or you're kind of handling or talking about social strategy, a lot of things that you hear and talk about, it has to do with what all these different tricks and tools that you're going to use to manipulate or maybe strategize or to even get your message out there to your community. But oftentimes I switch that back and say, do you know who your community is or what your community wants? And better yet, have you asked your community what they want? There's a recent blog post out by Buffer talking about how they're changing their development process for their product by asking the community, by simply tweeting out, hey, can anyone that's using Buffer jump on a Skype and answer some questions for us? We're curious your take on this. Things like that is taking social strategy to the next level. There's also an element of paid social that you have to kind of address. I'm one of those guys that I like to learn what works and then amplify that with paid social. So it's something that I kind of teach. It's something that I've realized that works. I test and tweak. I think social media is the perfect A/B testing ground. So there's no excuse not to be tweeting and testing out different headlines, different things that you're doing. Along with that, social isn't a choice anymore. Social business is no longer an option. If you are not a social business in 2014, you're not going to be a business long. And I'm not saying that means your business has to be tweeting every day or 50 times a day. What that means is you have to be listening. Social listening is the number one rule, probably should be number one and number two of your social strategy. Social listening. Tools like BuzzSumo and Spider are two of the ones that I am addicted to right now, because not only does it give me a plethora of data, but it allows me to splice and chunk that up to what matters to me. It's not just reports. I talk a lot about, if you follow me on social, that I like to use social data in context as part of the story. It's not the entire story, but when you use social listening things, you don't have to wonder what the community is doing. Another thing that goes along with that is if you follow our social selling hour or you read some of the social selling blogs, I recommend you doing so. Social Selling Hour is Mondays at 4 p.m. Twitter chat that we run. We had David Mimran Scott on this past week, kind of just talking about social selling as a whole, and it's something that is a slow-moving process, but something that's changing. And the consumer, the customer, us, we are more connected, more educated. We're the smarter person now than we were before because we have all of the access in front of us. I carry around my iPhone. If I'm shopping at Best Buy or if I'm in a store, I'm checking to see prices, what's going on online before I make a purchase. I'm a connected buyer. Now, I won't guarantee that it means I'm a smarter buyer, because I would question sometimes you'll find what people learn or think they know via YouTube or consuming. But what that means for us from a social strategy is all that data that we begged for. Oh man, I really wish I had feedback from my community. I really wish I knew their buying patterns. I really wish I knew how many times someone checked into a store before they actually made a purchase. That data is there for us today. We have no excuse not to be using that data. So when it comes to the connected and empowered consumer, that's a good thing for us. We need to take advantage of that. We need to build relationships. We need to listen. By building relationships, it doesn't mean just hitting reply to every tweet that's sent to your Twitter account and saying thanks. It's listening. It's promoting your community's content. Bring them into the fold. Give them a reason to care. The big part there is I'll talk about when it comes to social strategy, social listening is probably number one. Storytelling is probably number two. And what I say by storytelling is you have to be able to tell your story across all of your channels through all of your employees. That requires training. That requires you knowing what your story is. And if you don't know what it is or you're questioning it, ask your community. I can guarantee they have a story or a mission or a vision that they have for you. So that's a big point there. So we have storytelling, we have social listening, and I'm not talking about tools or techniques or all of these other things where we're going Facebook specific. There's lots of great people that know lots of things in each one of those avenues. But before we talk social strategy, and before you even understand when you start purchasing a tool, you have to understand how important listening is. You have to understand that it's not the same game today as it was before. The social selling, the social strategy, the digital planning that we did in 2013 is not the same thing in 2014. Our phones are bigger. The amount of content is out there is larger. We have content is king. Content's everywhere. The idea of content curation, no longer just reading a piece of content. We should read it, comment, reply, forward it. If you read Rachel Miller's blog post on Millennial CEO yesterday, it's very, very poignant because it's talking about with all this content, there's so much great content. Are we really consuming it or are we just sharing it? And if your social strategy is just a link drop, what value does that provide for your community? So take that back a step further. And then the next one I think is is my passion bucket, which I'm a passionate person. I'll be guilty. I'll sign up for that. You can hit that checkbox next to me. Is connecting communities. And when community is a new term, and that's something we discussed on a Twitter chat last night, Millennial Talk. It was lots of talk about personal branding and communities isn't something new. But the idea of connecting internal and external communities. When I say internal and external, I'm talking about internal customers and external customers. Internal customers are your employees. So it's educating and connecting them with the external community so that you have relationships. You humanize your brand. That means that you have to trust your employees. So if you're listening, you know your story, you trust your employees because they're your best assets. Your social strategy then from there is really telling your story, creating great content, and then letting your employees, your ambassadors, your community amplify that content. If it's curating content, if it's sponsoring a Twitter chat so that your community is involved in a Twitter chat that's going on so they understand what they're talking about, what they're sharing, what content, what tools they're using. Those things are important. Think about vertical communities. Think about the concept of if you want to relate with a small business and you are a large enterprise, why aren't you sponsoring a small business chat or a YouTube channel that's going on out there? Those are things that are going to make a difference to your community. The other thing is, with so much great content and so much content that is out there, we must focus our content strategy less on creating content just for content's sake and creating tons of content. We have to switch that. We should be creating great content, and then using the term that I use is upcycling that content. That means turning a great blog post into a slide share, into an infographic, into a video, taking a video interview, what I'm doing at Cloud Talk. Cloud Talk, I'm gonna be interviewing the industry leaders in cloud technology. I'm gonna take that 1 hour video and I'm gonna turn it into slides, into blog posts, into infographics. I'm gonna turn it into a podcast because that's gonna be great content. Why should I have to go reinvent the wheel? The other thing is, if you find great content, using sites like Scoop.it and Metal.it and these tools where you can actually take a great piece of content, add your input onto it, and then reshare it. Too often social executives or social people say we're too busy. Well, if you're too busy to write a blog post, I understand. I'm not the fastest blog post writer. I'm not that great with grammar, and I type and write blogs like I talk, which is fast and slightly sporadic. But I spend the time for blogs because there's some stuff that I really want to get out of my head out there. But if you don't have that time for that blog, why not curate 3 great pieces of content that you're already reading? from Forbes, from Entrepreneur, from Top Rank Blog, from Millennial CEO, from all of these sites that are already producing great content. Take their great content, because it's a philosophy that you're believing because you're already reading it, and put your insight on that and share that with your community. That will relate with your community. Content curation is one of those things where, why are we reinventing the wheel or doing all the work ourselves? The other one I like is using user-generated content. If you ask Dunkin' Donuts and the team over there, they'll get requests and videos and pictures sent into them, and they just take those ideas and they turn them into gold. Because if someone said and said, hey, I was eating a donut today and my son said it felt like he was a dragon having his favorite treat. We'll make an animated graphic of that, because they just told you the story that related to them. How many more people is that going to relate to? So the last but not least one is just be human, be yourself. If your brand has a story, if you are you want to be trustworthy, transparency is something that I preach and I believe in and I implement in my life. It's something that I work hard at. But transparency doesn't make you trustworthy. Transparency makes you authentic because you're letting someone into your view, but you have to be trusting first. So when you're building this social strategy and you're worried about all of these things, if you humanize your brand, if you show pictures in a boardroom, if you show some backroom strategy, give some tips, ask the community for input into the next ebook that you have going out. There's a company, that Atomic Reach, that reached out to me and said, hey, we have an ebook going out on content curation. We want to know your feedback so we can add your insights to our ebook. They were reaching out to their community and getting me to add value. So not only did I add value, but when they share that, I'm going to now share that across my entire community because I found value in it and they included me. So they didn't have to reinvent the entire thing or the philosophy, and now they're using that communities to their advantage. So I've kind of talked about a lot of things. I went from social listening to storytelling to the importance of creating great content and upcycling it, and then humanizing your brand. So all of that kind of builds into a social strategy. And you also have to think about it is, what goals do you have? Is your goal brand awareness? Is your goal just connecting and building brand ambassadors? Maybe your social strategy is just, hey, I want to share all of the crazy cool things that are going on behind the scenes in our company because it's a great recruiting tool. Your best recruiting tool are your current employees. Your best social marketers, social amplifiers are your current employees. So if you invest in them, teach them social, trust them to do the right thing, to share your story, they're not taking over marketing's job. They're not replacing PR. They're just amplifying that message. Just like you take a great piece of content and you amplify that by upcycling it everywhere. So I recommend you start fresh. Think of long-term goals. Think of what your goal is. Understand your story. Listen first. I appreciate everybody for sharing your insights. I've been rolling out these new Twitter chats. I have a new slide share out with my top 16 Twitter chats that I participate in. There's about 40 on my calendar that if you've gone to my isocialfans.com website. And at BroadSuite, we're really taking a forward-looking stance, and we're going to bring these Twitter chats, these Google Hangouts, and we're going to take them to a global scale. We're going to create communities around these because we want those communities of people to have their voice heard. Because just like in cloud technology where things are very confusing and all over the place, and on social, your customers, your fans, they just want to be heard. They want to know that they're heard. They want to know that you're listening. And that's what these chats and these communities are doing. Community is the future of business. Connecting internal to external, empowering your fans, creating a media hub, because we are reaching a time where your employees are going to be the stars of your brand because they've already been the backbone. No great company is great without its people. And now it's time, in the era that we're living in with social and digital, that you amplify these employees. You put them on center stage. They're the ones giving keynotes because they're the ones that can connect to the community that's going to be your ambassadors and evangelists. So good luck on your social strategy. Keep those questions coming. iSocial Talks on any of the social channels. Do me a favor, subscribe below, hit the like button, comment, do all of that fun stuff for me. I appreciate talking with you. I'm going to be rolling out a couple more of these in October on a more regular basis, so be looking out for iSocial Talks videos 4 to 5 days a week now. So submit your questions, send me DMs for those of you that don't want to put on the public side. But most of all, keep your head up, smile. Life is good. Happy October to everyone, and I will talk to you next time.